Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Today's topic is People Ops with an Agile Mindset, and this is brought to you by the Elevating HR series by HR Focus Point. And let's go ahead and jump right in there to give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Doug Miller. I've been doing HR for about 25 years, and I say during that time I've been studying employee and leadership behavior. I've had some really fantastic experiences having the opportunity to work on the global HR team at Lego as part of the franchising organization, the Mailboxes, etc., which is now the UPS store. That was the headquarters in San Diego. Yankee Group, which is an advisory and consultancy firm at the time specializing in the mobile technology space. Catalyst, which is the SEO, SEM arm of Group M and WPP. Mobiquity does software and application development. And Isotope, which is software and hardware development in the music and entertainment space, amongst other places that I've worked as a practitioner or as a consultant. I've been able to work with teams throughout the world, throughout the United States, UK, Japan, India, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Netherlands. So some really great opportunities that have been afforded to me. I'm a believer that everything pins to leadership. This is the success, the failures of any organization ultimately points to leadership. And I have a strong passion for elevating and increasing the capacity of our leaders. And what keeps me going in all of this is a sense of curiosity and understanding motivators and drivers. And we all make choices in the work that we do and in our personal lives every day. And I'm fascinated by those decisions that we make and the choices in those paths that we choose to go down. So from a people ops perspective or from a human resources perspective, our existence is no longer just in the service of the business, right? We've always been told that we are submissive to the needs of the organization, and the organization themselves is our customer, which is true, but we're no longer just in the service of the business. We're actually at the core of it. If you think about human capital, workforce planning, and we're going to go through some of this and why we should be at the core of the business. We're not just patching potholes in the roads. We're actually laying the road. So we do plenty of patching. We do plenty of problem solving. We do plenty of cleanup, right? We do that, but we are there to be the core of the business, and we're helping to lay the road. So what are we doing here today? So just to underscore this, everything pins to leadership. We are here to talk about management and leaders and looking at leadership development, and we will go through that today on those things that we should look at. But I just want to be really clear about something, that we're here not to talk about agile methodology and and how we manage through agile methodology that you see a lot of in technology companies will adopt, such as Scrum or Kanban. We're here to talk about agile with a small a. There is very little argument when you come down to it, and very little debate, that organizations need to increase their ability to manage within ambiguity, to increase their ability to be nimble and flexible, adaptable to what's going on around them. So that's what we're talking about here today. And there's been many discussions about a debate on, is agile the right methodology for us? And I don't want to get hung up on that in this conversation today, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about our ability on the core fundamentals of an agile environment is to be flexible, adaptable, anticipating needs, etc. How do we be part of, as leaders in our own right, the discussions, the conversation about we can do anything we want, right? And how do we become part of that discussion? Because as an organization, being an agile organization, that should be our main premise, that we can do anything we want. Now, how do we solve the problems of the world? How do we tell the market that they need our product or our service? So how do we become, as a people ops professional, part of that dialogue? We're going to go through management pitfalls and how to elevate our leaders' effectiveness. How do we manage our sticks? And we'll go through what I mean by that. Steps to incorporate an agile mindset into our leadership development programs. And then we'll look at the shift between our stereotypical approaches to the core elements of human resources into a more progressive path, and how we look at a differentiated view of how we look at our various different programs and how we can have a positive impact on our businesses. So to talk just a little bit about some terminology, all right, because I do think people ops means something. It's not just interchangeable in regards to personnel, and HR wasn't just another word for personnel, right? We were elevating from personnel about forms and bureaucracy and making sure that we were there, again, to service the business. That's what personnel was about. To human resources, that was much more of an elevation of that in terms of workforce planning, understanding human capital, understanding a broader array of competencies that HR professionals could bring to organizations. And now people operations is an elevation of that, where we become part of the operational efficiency of an organization that stretches way, way beyond our typical HR core competencies. So we exist to grow and scale the business. Period. End of story. That's why we're there. Right? And if we're going to be at the core of the business and helping lay that road, we have to understand that we exist to grow and scale the business. We do that by enabling our employees to be their best and authentic selves. And there's a whole lot of things on diversity and inclusion and how we understand our personas of our employees. There's ways we do that. And part of any agile thinking has us being customer-centric. We're here to grow and scale the business. We have to understand our customer. And I'm not talking about internal customer. I'm talking about ultimately, how are we impacting the world? And to imagine and execute programs to enable that organizational success. So that's people operations. And that's the evolution that we have seen. And we have to have a lot of passion and vigor in regards to the execution of what we're doing in helping organizations. Now, when we think about agile environments, and if you've had the opportunity to work in a technology type organization where they incorporated agile mindsets, I just want to generally ask for you to think about when you think about leaders, what are those things that either you've witnessed or you could imagine are issues and pitfalls that you see leaders miss in those types of environment. Let me get some of that thinking going in terms of these are some general elements that we will hear in agile environments. Experimentation, right? Let's experiment. Let's give it a try. Right? Because we are constantly learning and adapting through sprints. Sometimes those are daily sprints. Sometimes they're weekly sprints. Sometimes they're sprints that happen once a month, every 2 weeks. They could be different durations. But we experiment because we're learning and we're adapting along the way. We're self-organizing. So cross-functional teams will come together in a very organic way to meet the needs of a particular project, a particular outcome. Right? So there's shared outcomes and shared accountability. Those sound really, really good. But in terms of the leadership misses in those type of environments, there's accountability traps throughout this. Because if you can imagine this, right? As a leader, we get away with saying, it's an experiment. We're gonna learn, we're gonna adapt. But why it's a potential leadership miss is because if there is no direction or no calibration and no encouragement and no barriers along the way set, then what are we left with, right? We're left with a lot of empowerment, and we're just allowing things to progress unchecked, which may become unanchored to what we're trying to accomplish. So let's talk about that anchor, right? In leadership, the anchor is what leaders do, is they establish that anchor. We're establishing the purpose. Imagine an anchor in an open sea, all right, in the ocean, massive body of water. That huge concrete anchor will move and shift during big hurricanes and big changes in the business. Anchors will shift and adjust, but they're not as agile, right, as the tethers that are connected to that anchor. So that anchor has to set the dream, the vision, where we're going, and people have to tether and connect to that anchor so they understand and they have some boundaries and they're encouraged, right? The things they're doing has an impact. So that's setting a direction. They're setting individual charters for people. In an organization that I was working for, I remember this one employee. She was lost. She used to be really, really good, thought of very, very highly, talked about in really, really positive terms. They began to do this Agile Mindset. She became frustrated. She was lost. She was wandering in the open ocean, untethered to anything. She was doing the best she could. She was grabbing on to where she could, but she had no tether. She was not connected to anything. And she was lost. There was a leadership absence to grab onto her and connect her to a vision, a purpose, and to give her a charter of why she's doing the things she's doing to make an impact to the organization. She didn't have that. That's a leadership miss in regards to this agile environment. So that's the anchor and the tether. Those have to come together. Let me give you another example. I was working with an executive, and he and I would butt heads. We would clash episodically. But we also had a really, really great relationship. So in that relationship, we were able to sit back and reflect upon and become aware, or trying to elevate our awareness of why we were not connecting. And what we discovered is nor he or I were actually tethered to the anchor of our ultimate boss, who was the CEO. So me and this other executive were two buoys, just call it two buoys in the open sea. Imagine that, right? Two huge buoys that were clashing into each other and wandering. We're not tethered to a purpose, not tethered to what would our boss say about this, right? What is the boundaries that he has set for us? Keep in mind, tethers are flexible. They're nimble. There's movement. They go with the current. They change. But we're not just set free on an open ocean to self-organize and to be totally organic of wherever we end up. We have to have an anchor and a tether in an agile environment. So agile environments, we actually have to elevate our leadership. Again, we have to elevate our leadership, not step away from the leadership. So the role of people operations is to, again, understand we exist to grow and scale the business. We have to strive to find ways to understand the customer. And it is so rewarding when people operations is set in a position to actually interact with our actual customers and who we're actually impacting. It's actually absolutely incredible because it helps with everything else we do to establish a purpose for us. Because how does the organization interact with them? It actually gives us a premise behind organizational development. We challenge this conventional thinking. This is the role of people operations. This is when we challenge conventional thinking, we actually have to increase our own vulnerability to ask those questions. People operations is set up to almost be that helicopter that can rise above everything else that's happening around us and see from a horizontal perspective of what those interactions are. Do we have a tight operational efficiency? Where are the gaps? Imagine we are hovering and we're seeing the gaps and the holes and the things that are working really, really well and those things that need work. So we have a broad potential of having some really amazing impact in the organization. And then ultimately, have we integrated all of our systems and our programs to make sure they make sense? And the power of really great programs and systems really are seen when you begin to see dependencies begin to form between the things we set up, systems or programs. So let's talk about the sticks. How do we manage our sticks, right? Again, we're going to talk about this agile mindset. So it is always about our customer. We should always be talking about our customers. As we do with our customers, we have customer personas. What are those profiles that we go after from a marketing perspective? Employees also have various personas. So this is a different topic. We're not going to go deep into the employee personas, but it's a whole other topic about diversity and the depths of diversity that we show up to work for various different reasons, various different motivators and drivers, intrinsic motivators, and there's extrinsic motivators. There's all of this, but we have to understand that not all employees are the same. So that's a different discussion, but we have to understand the employee personas in regards to the how do we manage our sticks. And these are the sticks. The sticks are the folks, the collection of employees that we have. This is the understanding the day-to-day workload. This is organizational development. What's the workforce design? What are the efficiencies, the effectiveness? This is what we do every single day to execute as employees, as a collection, as our population, as a whole. How do we actually execute the needs of the business to ultimately have a positive impact on our customers? Now, these blocks here are programs, initiatives, philosophies, approaches. There's a whole bunch of ideas that could be thrown out there that will have a positive impact on the business. Ultimately, there's the goal of there's a different approach or an initiative that we think will have a positive impact on the efficiency or effectiveness of the organization. Now, imagine if you take too many of these blocks and you start to pile them on top of the sticks. Disconnected, right? You just start piling different approaches on these sticks. Well, the sticks begin to have stress and they begin to crack. Some of them begin to snap. So if you are just piling a bunch of different initiatives and programs on top of the sticks, we have to be very mindful. There was one organization that I worked for that there were so many initiatives that were disconnected to not only the employee personas and the motivators and drivers of our employees, but disconnected from the day-to-day workload, that we had to put a presentation together that was referred to as a framework salad. Because there was so much framework that we had to develop a training program to untangle the perceptions of disconnectedness, right? So the reality was, because perceptions lead to reality, we had to untangle that through a presentation of Framework Salad. So we want to make sure that we have a connectedness through all of this. Not only our customers and our vision, but the employee personas, motivators and drivers, the day-to-day workload, and the very initiatives and programs that we're putting in place. And this is a different program that we start really getting into leadership development, and this is an element called connected leaders. And connected leaders understand how to make that connection. Right? And then that's the horizontal view and making sure that it all starts working in concert. So that's the how do we manage our sticks. And the sticks is about looking at role design. Every role in the organization, how are they designed and how do they interact and engage with one another? The sticks is also understanding about organizational development. It's no longer the top down, the command and control, the silos, the hierarchy, the org charts that we've seen. That's kind of a machine. That's an old way of looking at things. And a note on that. Many times HR will get hung up on the bureaucracy and command and control. So be mindful that when we're managing our sticks through organizational development, that we sometimes get stuck on bureaucracy and command and control. And that's where we become less efficient in the work that we do. So we're switching from machines to more organisms, right? In the organisms, there's a focus on actions and outcomes. Teams become much more cross-functional. There's full project life cycles and accountability in these cross-functional teams. There's a lot of shifting and adjusting and a lot of showcasing a lot of those abilities to be nimble in the work that we do during moments of change. And leaders have to provide the purpose, the direction, the calibration. So organizational development is getting increasingly more complex and an ongoing initiative that should be happening on a regular basis. Because it's not just looking at org charts anymore. It's actually looking about these cross-functional teams and how we're interacting and the introduction of new projects and the end of projects and then introduction of the new project that are happening at various different times. And then anticipation of that change and driving that evolution. So anticipate and drive evolution and change. Those are the sticks. That's how we manage the day-to-day. That's how we begin to get into a more of a connected leadership environment. So things we need to begin to ask ourselves in our organizations is take these questions. This is just about self-awareness and where we're at today as an organization. How do we work? How do we interact with one another? How are we all intertwined? What kind of pushes us and binds us together as cross-functional teams? What are those elements? And what are those fissures that happen between cross-functional teams? What is the strength of those individual tethers? So we talked about that anchor and tether. First of all, are people tethered to an anchor, or are they just wandering on an open sea and doing the best they can? And how, if they are tethered to something, are those tethers strong? Are they frayed? Do people not get it? Are they tethered to something they don't agree with? So there's a whole lot of questions, sub-questions under that one. What are the cycles within our roles? Roles will change, right? They will evolve. Things will be added. Things will drop off. And how does that actually impact that employee persona, their intrinsic motivators, what keeps them going every day, and are they still connected to the purpose? So these are some questions that we need to ask ourselves to begin this journey. So people ops develop an agile leadership and extend leadership capacity. We do that in a leadership development program, and I'm going to give you 6 things to begin to take a look at. Number 1, tether the team to a clear direction. You've talked about that, right? That anchor and tether. So let's tether the team to a clear direction and set the current. Again, think about the sea, think about the ocean. Currents happen. It changes, it shifts. But leaders have to set the current. That's calibration. That's a whole bunch of different elements of how we set the current. So that's part of the leadership development series. How do we do that? So stay anchored to the market and always be customer-centric. So your leadership development series should be incorporating these elements to stay anchored to our customer, why we're here, what's the impact that we're making to the world. Number 3, balance, empowerment, and accountability. This is constantly calibrating our teams. As we should know, empowerment without accountability is chaos. Right? There's no control of where we're going and what the future actually looks like if there's no accountability. Accountability is that mechanism to calibrate. Right? Accountability without empowerment is just really a not very positive environment. So we have to balance those two together. How do we develop our leaders in regards to teaching expertise and not be the expert? So think about that. Teach expertise and not be the expert. This is a shift in regards to leadership, not the command and control. The leaders have to have all the answers. We are here to tell people what to do and tell them what the direction is to take. Absolutely, leaders have a tremendous amount of wisdom and experience behind them. But how do you teach and mentor and guide others to increase their potentials to be the future experts? Number 5, build team capacity in high-functioning teams. The easiest way to do that is not to take a particular role and then give them a whole set of really stretch goals to hopefully cross your fingers that they're going to achieve it. Constantly give a little bit more. Constantly give a bit more for them to learn something new, test out their capabilities, and then guess what? Give them a little bit more. So this is connected leadership. This is doing that for all different team members. And back to those other steps, balancing and empowerment and accountability. And this is about communication. This is about giving them an anchor to attach to. There's a whole lot of things that's in this point. Number 6, coach and be curious. As leaders, we need to be curious about behavior and what keeps us going, about choices. It's about coaching. It's about being a connected leader. So we have to understand our internal dependencies, the power of wisdom and insights, our overall impact. We have to look at pressures and opportunities and how things are evolving. But leaders provide snacks. We extend our professional capacity. We give employees something to chew on. And what I mean by that, we are surrounded every single day by snackable moments to learn. They're not the big programs we put in place. It's every day of connecting with our staff and giving them just a little bit something to consider to chew on. So they can sit back and say, I intend to do these things. And asking their mentor in that leader to help calibrate them, to learn. So we are surrounded, even us as leaders, we're surrounded by snackable moments to learn. And let's consider that of how we actually connect with our staff. So in regards to facilities, if facilities is part of your purview on people operations, think about that it's a shift also between maintenance. It used to be just, there's a broken toilet or the light bulb's out. We need to rearrange the cubes or whatever the case was. There is a shift even in facilities operations, that shift from maintenance to the employee experience. Sure, there's still going to be the maintenance supports the ultimate experience. Right? So it's a different way of actually looking at how facilities actually shows up in the organization. It is about the employee experience to then increase productivity and increase efficiency and effectiveness, to create spaces that enable the flow. If you're not familiar with that terminology, the flow is, I'm working on a particular project that I started at 10 o'clock. Before I know it, I look up, oh my gosh, it's already 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went right through lunch. I didn't even realize it. This is getting so engage in the work that you're doing there is intrinsic motivators that you're on fire, and before you know it, time slips away. So this is facilities creating these thinking environments, these huddle spaces, being able to break down geographical platforms that may get in the way of us executing our work. So it's no longer just the maintenance, right? So keep that in mind. There's a whole other shift, whereas to people operations. I won't go through all of this, and I will send this to you. If you send me an email, I'll make sure that I get you these questions. And this is just to begin to provoke the thinking about how we're shifting in various different elements in the HR people operations world. There's a stereotypical approach and more of a progressive approach. Again, I won't go through all of these, but if you take a look at leadership, for example, the more stereotypical approach was very top-down, power and control, expert authority. We went through all of that. The new world is setting up the current with points of view, driving the mastery, get closer to the customers, the connector, the visionary. So there's a shift that's happening. Total rewards, the stereotypical approach, is just compensation, carrot and stick. You do this, you get a bonus. It's becoming much more of the bonus is still impactful, for example, but it's a vehicle to recognize achievement and respect for the efforts that people are putting in. So there's some of these are slight variations, but it's a mindset. It's a mindset shift that we have to begin to undertake. So the next steps are to explore where you are at today, connect with folks throughout the organization, being able to have that power of being that horizontal viewer and looking at the organization, connect and calibrate. And that means also calibrate yourself, right? Educate and be educated. This is being a student, but while you're also educating others about your lessons learned and what you're getting out of it. Sharpen the what that we're even talking about. Use storytelling to tell the why. This is employee engagement data. This is using customer data, financial data. This is using various different data points to be able to do storytelling, to express the why we're even headed down this particular path about having an agile mindset in our leaders. Sell the imagine a world where. This is where you want to be an evangelist. Imagine a world where our employees and leaders are so connected and gelled together that they are actually creating a world that has high impact not only to them, but to our customers. Imagine a world where our products have such a significant impact that people begin to want to explore additional products that will help improve their lives. So selling that through the imagine a world where, and then insert what your vision is. Develop a plan. Start small, right? It doesn't have to be these big, huge, grandiose plans. You can start really small. But how do you do it and when you do it? And that's really dependent on the appetite for the organization as a whole and for your leaders. But I just want to be really, really clear about something also before we leave. It's a journey. It's not going through how people ops and leaders shift to more of an agile mindset, one and done. Leadership and people ops development is a journey. There's a tremendous amount of continuation of the thinking and the dialogue, whether that's diversity and inclusion, and that in uncovering the richness of what people bring to organizations and their background, having an intentional culture. How do we re-recruit our existing talent through motivation? This is about adapting and being nimble. So it's a journey. And there's a lot of different training programs that we can incorporate for our leaders to begin to expand and increase their leadership capacity. So thank you for your time. Please send me an email and I can get you a copy of this presentation, at least some of those questions and the shift between that stereotypical approach to the more progressive approach. or those questions you need to begin to ask yourselves of where you're at today, how are we intertwined, how do we work together, what are those efficiencies, send me an email at doug@hrfocuspoint.com. Certainly check out our website, and our contact information is out there as well. But again, Doug Miller, thank you for your time. I hope you got something out of this, and have a wonderful day, and hope to engage with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.